Yes,
Tell
I
me a
did.
little bit about growing up in Niskayuna and how long you lived here for.
Okay, so I grew up on Maple Lane off of Pierce Road. I was born in St. Clair's actually. No longer exists. And I went to elementary school at Rosendale, and then I went to Iroquois Middle School, and then I went to Niskayuna High School. And I graduated in 2004.
And did your Aunt Robin come visit you when you were little?
Yes, she
Yeah.
did.
Tell me a little bit about your relationship with Robin and her coming to visit up in Niskayuna.
And we would always try to get together during the holidays. So whether she came up for Easter, or we would come down for Thanksgiving or Christmas, every year we would make a purpose to come together. Mom was super close with her sister, and I was extremely close. I viewed Robin as my second mom. And she was just so nurturing, and she was extremely extroverted. So she made it a point to just get people to open up and feel really comfortable. And my family is a little more introverted, so it was really nice to find someone like me who's a bit extroverted. Yes, I was in Niskayuna when I found out she died. My grandpa called my mom and just was like, we were literally about to get in the car, I think that week, and drive down to Fairfax, Virginia. And my grandpa was like, Mary, she's dead. Like, she's gone. She's murdered. And my mom just, I mean, when you hear that and your life is normal, you just, I mean, she was just sleeping in her bed. Like, she wasn't anywhere. She wasn't exposing herself to anything dangerous. She was just living a life any of us would. And so that is when my mom found out. And then that's when my mom didn't tell me the details because I was 8 at the time. But she did tell me, she's just, Robin's gone. And I just didn't know. It was just a huge question mark. And then we drove down to Fairfax anyways, and we went to her house. And I remember seeing stains on the floor and just the house being very dark and cold, and not as welcoming and warm as I was used to. It just wasn't fun. I was like, it's usually fun when we come down here. Today is not fun.
I feel like even as a kid, like you can tell when something's wrong, even if you don't know what it is.
Correct.
Like e- the adults in the room are acting different. It's probably hard to put into words, but how has the past 30 years been for you up until, I guess, 2023 when the arrest finally happened?
It was very hard. My mom struggled the most, which impacted me. She withdrew, and it changed kind of our relationship a bit because she couldn't she felt she couldn't relate or connect to the fact that that had happened, and then having to explain it to her child. And so that took a toll. It was very traumatic. No one really talked about it, and I think it created a disconnection in our family because we couldn't talk about what had happened because A, we didn't know, and B, we just knew the violent nature of the crime. One thing that stood out to me the most, it was her funeral. I like begged my mom to see her one last time and keep the casket open. But unfortunately, we couldn't because he totally decimated her face. So the casket was closed. And so that is one thing I will never forgive anybody for. Like, that's the most traumatic.
And when you finally found out about an arrest, a confession, the court process started happening, what was going through your mind during that time?
So we were in complete shock. The Washington Post actually kept up with her story, through just going through cold cases, which we appreciated. And then we would get calls from the detective with updates. So they would say, oh, hey, like, we did a sketch from the DNA. Do you know this person? And we would look at the photo and be like, no idea who this person is. When we got the call, they're like, they found him. And we're like, what? What happened? It was just really, really good DNA work, done by individuals, especially Parabon, where they mapped out the family tree. and they found a hit, and then they found a photo, and then they were able to trace him back. The one thing that took my family back the most is when we found out he was living in Niskayuna. Um, we were like, what? We didn't know how to react. I think we were in shock until the sentencing. I think the sentencing was the opportunity for my mom, who gave her victim impact statement, to really let it out, to tell Robin's story, to tell her story. Um, there was tears there was a big courtroom. There's a lot of press. There was just tears everywhere. It was really sad. And so now I think getting the closure of just knowing he's behind bars, and that fear of knowing like nobody else can be hurt, we are safe, is great. But unfortunately, are constantly going to be living with the fact that this happened, and Robin's no longer here for the rest of our lives. That just doesn't go away.
30 years of not having any answers, and then all of a sudden you have all the answers. How does that help in finding closure?
One thing that finding all of this out has helped our families is creating connection and being able to talk about it. Because there was a 30 years where it was a closed case. We didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. And now it's almost like we have an opening to have a conversation, to connect, to be together. It was nice to get the whole family together again. Even though under an unfortunate circumstance, we were all at dining together, and just being happy and being just very open toward one another and supportive.